I refuse to believe that I am not capable of taking care of publishing an episode of Noise with Ivan once a week. It is, it's a fun thing, really. I mean, it takes maybe 2 hours to edit an episode, 1 hour to record it. Anyway, I always thought when I decided I would do an episode once a week, YouTubers, I like to get something out once a day. When I was a kid, I would watch PewDiePie and I would say, yeah, once a day I need that. I need a daily video, especially if it's just a webcam thing. And if, as me, I'm a casual YouTuber, maybe like every once in a while, catch everybody up kind of thing. Once a week, I think, is a good amount. So it's something I think I should be able to do, especially when I'm just sitting down and talking about the music that I've listened to. I also need to make sure that I'm listening to that much music. I mean, it's a good thing to keep up with. I like that I do it. But I have always I've kept up with this thing for 63 episodes. Most people quit, and they say that what you have to do to become successful at YouTube is to practice consistency. Consistency is the key to building an internet fan base or whatever it is. And I started a new job and then threw everything off the rails. Nonetheless, I'm recording again. It's time for Noise with Ivan. Roll the intro. I should say, I think I may have had another hiatus where I was having a hard time keeping up. And didn't do an episode for at least 1 week, maybe 2 weeks, something like that. But yeah, I started working on audiobooks and producing audiobooks, narrating and editing the audio. And my normal Pro Tools laptop crapped out. And I had to start using Pro Tools on this, which I normally would only, use for. I mean, I wouldn't process audio or like edit audio on this, but now I'm editing audio on this, and the RAM is full, and it has never had a lot of RAM. So I would use the other one for, audio editing. And it didn't crap out until I got a job. So, I got hired to narrate an audiobook. I was completely shocked. I'd almost given up on it because things were starting to ramp up. And I've had a hard time keeping up with Not of the Flesh, not that I'm not doing it. But I've had a really hard time keeping up with it for sure. And it's as though I've built an empire, and now it's falling apart because I have another thing that I wanted to try, right? And I'm putting all my chips, everything that I've built up in the noise community, on something else. And that doesn't feel good. I don't like it, mostly because it's not me who built an empire. I was blessed with, and it's not really an empire. It's just a couple fun things that I do, which is Not of the Flesh and Noise with Ivan. And I don't want to let these things go because I've had a lot of support. I've been very blessed to have all the things that I do at this point. And so I've been, kind of keeping up with doing noise reviews. I haven't listened to as much, very much noise at all. I've been very, very busy. Granted, I could be using my time better. I have gotten better at producing the audiobooks, so I think I can handle everything. I just have to have good. Yeah, good is a good way to put it. Not better as if it's already good, because I don't feel that it already is good. Time management and willpower, get-to-itiveness. Because ultimately, some of the things I do as a career, that is for entertainment. It is, and anyway, I could get philosophical. So anyway, the book that I opened up, and it's hotter than a $2 pistol in here, by the way. I forgot to get out of here. I have some more editing to do, so I'll go in and do that after I record this. This is a hot coffee, too. The book I got hired to do was called The Iron of the Anvil. It's the fourth in the series. The series is called The First Architect of Iterra. I've been working on this audiobook, and I talked to the author, Ralph Clayton, who's been very gracious to me, and pretty cool. As far as it's gone, he hasn't had any complaints yet, is what I should say. We've had a good relationship up until this point. I'm about 5 chapters into recording it at this point. I'll be doing the 6th chapter soon. He mentioned, I was talking about him about the tone of the book, what I should be doing, how I should be acting, what kind of, what can I do better from an acting perspective. Because that was the big shocker, that it was at voice acting. I thought of it as producing an audiobook or reading with a nice voice, but the word acting kind of blindsided me when I went to do this. I just thought it was another audio gig, to make a couple extra bucks. Acting, though. And I'm learning to do this acting, and I'm talking to him about it, and he says, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Starship Troopers. It's kind of a fun sci-fi like that. Now, I don't generally regard myself as a fan of, I think I like sci-fi as much as the next guy, but I haven't been able to read fiction at all, as outside of C.S. Lewis and Dostoevsky. Fiction cannot hold my attention. It's a really difficult thing for me to do. I will read blankly when I read it, and But obviously, when I'm reading aloud and doing a job like this, it's a little bit better and actually enjoyable. I think if I was to pick something to record, sci-fi would be the choice, and it's what I was auditioning for. And I got a job. He said, give it a sci-fi twist, and I said, well, I don't even know what a sci-fi twist would be. I thought in my head, there is a sci-fi twist. He wasn't pushy about it, but he said you can add a sci-fi twist to it, the sci-fi feel. And I was like, what is a sci-fi feel? How do you talk in a sci-fi way if you're not doing... Because you're not supposed to add sound effects or anything like that. So I open this thing up. I go to listen to an audiobook to test out the waters. Right? I'm listening to the Starship Troopers audiobook. He didn't mention the book Starship Troopers from 1959 or 1949 or whenever it's from, the 50s, I think. You can just say the 50s. But this guy is reading it, and he sounds like Humphrey Bogart. So it was really an awkward thing. But what I did while I was listening to it was a little bit boring, and I'm listening to this audiobook on one speed, the first speed setting, as opposed to 1.25 or 1.5, which you would normally listen to an audiobook a little bit sped up, so it can keep up with these modern brains that we have. And I'm listening to it at the regular pace, and I'm like, well, trying to listen through the whole book, really, I wanted to do that, even though I was just kind of getting a taste for what is the sci-fi feel. And I'm listening to this book, and I said, shoot, I might throw on some noise while I listen to this book. It worked out perfectly. For some releases, I should say Death Industrial works really well with a book like that. It makes everything, all the action and violence and intensity and war theme kind of work pretty well. The release that I put on while I was browsing and listening to the book was Final Liberation by Amez Senglantes. I believe he had a really long release. There was a really long release by him, and I'll post it up here, but it's his most popular thing. I think it's called Crackdown, maybe. And, of course, it was just too much. It wasn't condensed enough. This made for a more artistic piece. I enjoyed it quite a bit more, as opposed to some sort of marathon, even though Crackdown I'm sure was very good as well. It's been a while since I've listened to it, but that was how I was introduced to Amez Senglantes. But yeah, I really like this. It's from back in 2006. This is OG, old school noise. But still new enough and progressive enough that it's interesting and composed quite a bit. And there's a lot of dialogue and news recordings, things like that, are going on in this release. It's I heard it as a power electronics and death industrial thing, which, while, you might want something that's a little bit more passive, maybe Glitch or something like that to go with an audiobook, pairing it with an audiobook, noise pairings. I love it. I love it, doing noise pairings with audiobooks. And that's the number one reason why, in audiobooks, I mean, I assume that people don't want a lot of production. I was listening to the Lord of the Rings books, and they had like music and sound effects like footsteps and things like that. And I thought, this just doesn't work, because I'm trying to listen to it sped up. I'm trying to listen to it with something else. That's a lot of times I'll play video games and listen to music, or a sermon or an audiobook, and there's too much sound in the video game. Sometimes we have to be okay with that. Noise releases are there to work with something else, and the music is there to work with something else, and the video game is there to work with something else. And this is kind of the way the world works at this point. Everything comes in pairs. But it has a warmer cassette sound, which I like. I think everybody likes that. And there's a lot of rhythmic structure in this piece. It's a solid pick. Controlled Death, Live Ritual. It was cool. It was not necessarily good. I really liked the release. I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of good ideas. I liked the ideas and the things that he was doing. It didn't work well. It wasn't composed. If you just played me samples of the release next to each other and didn't play it as a whole release, I would think, oh, these are cool. This is cool stuff. But not so much. Of course, this was the beginning of my listening to Controlled Death, who is a black metal artist. You may know him as Masona. I believe it's Masona. And yeah, I kind of got into black noise a little bit this week. There are a couple other black noise releases I listened to that my difficulty oftentimes, and this is not an issue with Controlled Death, these releases are just black metal releases that are noisy. This is low grade, so it's kind of the same way that noisecore ends up being a lot of the time a shabbily recorded punk record, or a hardcore record, just on a cassette tape, or a live recorded in a basement while the band played with one mic. It's that kind of feel for a lot of black noise records and a lot of noisecore records, which I don't think that's what we think of. Certainly not for black noise. There's definitely a black metal vibe that you can get from, like, maybe a leaning toward power electronics, but just with a black metal vibe, instead of kind of the skinheady screaming. Instead of screaming like this, it's like this. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Symphony for Black Murder was the Controlled Death release that I went on to after that, knowing that Controlled Death is a big name and that I should know what's going on with Controlled Death. This is a 2018 release, and I think this was what the main RYM release. I have to be careful because I have so much to do. I'm so busy. I'm going to have a breakdown in the episode. But it was immediately a lot better than the Live Ritual, which is the Live Ritual was interesting, and the Devil's Gate release, it was interesting because it was in a metal. It was a tape in a metal case. I thought it was a pedal, an effects pedal at first, which would be interesting to. Well, and I think that's what a lot of noise artists do, is they sell synthesizers and things like that. I mean, that's almost more valuable, because the noise market is noise artists. They're never just noise fans. It's very uncommon for someone just to be a noise fan and not make noise, because it's so easy to make. Hot takes. Yeah, it was intense listening to it with Starship Troopers. It had a different feel from the first release, Final Liberation, that I started with, but it made it so much more dramatic. It was very fun. I listened to Tight Noose. Tight Noose is just a standalone noise wall, really. I don't know of any other Tight Noose releases, but this was a self-titled release from 2019. It has that that death industrial power electronics aesthetic that kind of rolls with what I had been doing on the list when I first started a public list for Noise with Ivan. I should note that that's the way I've always done Noise with Ivan. I've created a list where I go and listen to as much stuff as I want, and then I put that all in a list, and I go over the list later for Noise with Ivan. This list was a lot more in depth than what I would normally write. I would normally write just a couple notes, and it usually would be within a couple days of me recording. Right now I'm recording maybe a couple weeks after I wrote these notes, because I wrote these before the Indie Pop episode came out, when I knew that I was going to have a hard time keeping up with Noise with Ivan episodes because I'd put Pro Tools on this computer. But we're going to see if I can get this one edited and put out. I have been running out of space, but I'll see if I can get a hard drive hooked up, I suppose. Postscriptum Gauze was something I enjoyed a great deal. The voices, the delayed sounds, the noise wall elements, the sound effects. It went good with Starship Troopers, but it was different. It transcended the piece, and it made everything more dramatic and changed the tone of the book. And it makes me wish in some regard that I could, use power electronics alongside. But that's the good thing, okay? You can have a person that's a fan of sci-fi novels and a fan of noise music, and in a perfect world, even let's say I was still stocking shelves at the grocery store the way I used to when I listened to a lot of audiobooks and a lot of noise. What if I could listen to noise and audiobooks at the same time while I was working? I can definitely do it on my computer pretty easily. The only caveat is that you can't use Bandcamp to listen to them on your computer. Maybe if I downloaded the albums from Bandcamp, if there are albums that I owned on Bandcamp, I could download them and control the volume through Apple Music or iTunes or whatever, the app on here that plays WAV files. That's an interesting idea, and then I could listen to the audiobook. But what I've been doing now is it has to be audiobooks on YouTube, and it has to be noise albums on YouTube, so that I can turn down the noise album significantly lower than the audiobook. And in a lot of cases, both of these things are ad-free. Usually these are not monetized. This is one of the weird albums where I'm asking the whole time, is this dark ambient? Is this death industrial? Is this noise wall? It's a very broad release. I'd probably put it under dark ambient, though, with what I said, completely changing the whole tone of the release from what was slightly different, going from power electronics and death industrial, completely changing the whole tone of the book, I should say. The release had its own tone, but it was... I don't want to put it up against Controlled Death like that, but it was pretty broad in everything that it did. Oh, goodness. So, liking it. And I like this combination. You should probably listen to noise this way. Should I name this How to Listen to Noise? Let me tell you something. If you're teaching people how to listen to noise, I feel like that would be popular. Because How to Listen to Harsh Noise Walls was the only... Noise with Ivan, I think, to pass 500 views, let alone get all the way up to 600 or 1,000. I mean, I don't like to get controversial, but then you get the clicks. It's supposed to be something for fun. So if it's stressful, you regard it as difficult to keep the fun going. Sostra Tinnitus. I added in here twice, I believe. The one song that I got that was on YouTube was very good, and then this is from 2005. I'll put the list in the description. It'll be all right. I feel like I'm in Cuba right now. Uh, I listened to the first song and it was so gorgeous. It reminded me of Gemtone, who was a Richmond artist. Gemtone. I don't know if it was a male or female artist, transgender possibly. I'm not sure. But um, Ray Ludwig, hasn't made anything in a long time, but I really loved this release, this cassette tape that I got, which I accidentally stepped on and crushed, unfortunately. But I got this cassette tape when I was a kid from Vinyl Conflict, and it was just this beautiful ambient release, and it was, completely new to me. Things that I may have discovered later, but still that were accessible within public thought or what you could find on the internet. Because that's the value of going to the record store. You can find some things that are completely unknown. No one knows about it. That's the idea. That's what you're looking for, is stuff that no one knows about and stuff that's completely underground and no one really likes. It's not connected to a niche, So that was the valuable thing about getting the cheap cassette tapes at the record store, and how I got into noise. I would attribute this to something like Grouper. Grouper is kind of like that, but Grouper is less comfortable. Grouper is very a little more mainstream than Gemtone. Gemtone is very something different. Yeah, check out Gemtone for sure. So when I went to listen to this album I found a YouTube release of it. And I enjoyed that very much, but the problem was that I went on to listen to it in Bandcamp because I liked that so much. It just didn't have the same vibe. I think there's a lot of ambient releases that are not understood to be as good as they are. And the problem with ambient releases is you have to appreciate the beauty of it, you have to turn it on and listen to it. It doesn't work the same way, and that's the reason I turned off Starship Troopers. You can't have your mind busy while you're listening to it. It clears your brain, and people don't want to do that. We don't want to clear our brains. We don't want to stop doing the things that we like to do. So it's very hard to have a real experience with some of these longer releases and releases that just require your entire attention. But when you give it to them, most ambient releases are going to be very rewarding. And if they aren't rewarding, give them a bad review. If they are rewarding, give them a very good review, so we can find them, It's easy to make ambient music just like it's easy to make noise music. So it's hard for us to narrow it and, dumb it down and get it to releases that we're just going to have the time to listen to when we want to listen to one. There's more that I listen to, I'm sure. When I listen to Starship Troopers, there's more black noise releases that I want to listen to. But I'll get into those another time. Maybe I'll try them with a different book. Maybe I'll listen to Ivanhoe or Tom Jones or something like that. That will be a fun thing to listen to with some black noise music. I feel like listening to, or, the Song of Roland or some kind of medieval thing, Beowulf. Listen to that and listen to, in tandem, black noise. Give me black noise, public domain book recommendations, things that I can listen to while I listen to a good black noise release. Godspeed, thank you so much for listening. I am going to try to level it up. I'm going to try to step it up. I did get around to making another Contrite Heart. It was fantastic. I just felt it. I needed to follow it, and that today I needed to record noise with it. I'm going to do my best. I don't know. There's no guarantees. I never intended on being a YouTuber. I just started a podcast for the heck of it. So I don't know what the future is, but I don't really want to let it go because I'm very blessed to have what I have. There's more CDs coming. I should be coming out with a batch soon because there have been so many things for me to make that I have made, but they haven't all come out yet. So I'm going to bring out a batch soon, hopefully, for you Not of the Flesh fans if you're waiting for new CDs to come out. Godspeed. Thank you very much. I will see you next time.